I can still shoot. Injured Marine sniper returns to save her team with impossible shot. The doctor said her career was over. The military said she was finished. Her damaged eye meant she'd never look through a scope again. But when her former team walked into a deadly ambush, orchestrated by a traitor within their own ranks, Elena Graves proved that the deadliest weapon isn't perfect vision. It's an unbreakable will. This is the story of a Marine sniper who lost everything, trained in secret with a legendary mentor, and returned to execute the most impossible shots ever recorded, all while hunting the man who betrayed them. From the mountains of Kandahar to a final confrontation at 1,500 yards, this is a tale of redemption sacrifice, and one woman's refusal to let her brothers in arms die alone. Before we begin, if you appreciate stories of courage and perseverance, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more incredible, true-to-life tales. Your support means the world to us. Now let's go back to where it all started. A perfect shot and the explosion that changed everything. The wind in Kandahar Valley blows different than anywhere else in the world. It moves like a living thing, shifting and swirling through the mountain passes with a mind of its own. Most snipers hate it. Elena Graves had learned to love it. She lay motionless on the ridgeline, her body pressed against the sun-baked earth, the scope of her M40A6 rifle steady against her eye. Below her, 1,500 feet down and 1,400 yards out, a compound sat nestled in the valley like a scorpion in its den. Intelligence said a high-value target was inside, a Taliban commander responsible for the deaths of 12 Americans in the past 6 months. Elena's breathing had slowed to the point where her chest barely moved. Her heart rate, normally 60 beats per minute, had dropped to 42. This was the zone. The place where time stretched and the world contracted to nothing but the target, the rifle, and the space between them. Through her scope, she watched a man emerge onto the compound's flat roof. He wore traditional Afghan clothing, but his gait gave him away. Military training leaves its mark on how a man moves, and this man moved like a soldier, trying not to look like one. "Target confirmed," Elena whispered into her radio. "Adult male, approximately 6 feet, black turban, northeast corner of the roof. Range 1,400 yards. Wind from the west at 12 miles per hour, gusting to 15. "You have the green light, Graves," came the response from Captain Brian Wade, her team leader and best friend for the past 3 years. "Take the shot when ready." Elena made her calculations automatically, her mind processing variables that would baffle most people. Bullet drop at this range would be approximately 400 inches. The wind would push the round 18 inches to the right. She needed to account for the angle of the shot, the temperature, even the rotation of the earth itself. Her finger moved to the trigger. She exhaled slowly, finding that perfect pause between breaths where the body becomes absolutely still. The rifle cracked. For a moment, nothing happened. Then 1,400 yards away, the man on the roof jerked backward and fell. "Target down." Elena reported, her voice as calm as if she were ordering coffee. "Clean hit." "Confirmed," Wade replied. "Outstanding shooting, Graves. Assault team, you're clear to move in." Elena remained in position, watching through her scope as the assault team swept through the compound below. This was her 47th confirmed kill. 47 times she had looked through a scope and made the decision to end a life. People who had never done it thought it would get easier. They were wrong. It never got easier. You just got better at living with it. But Elena didn't dwell on philosophy. She had a job to do, and she did it better than almost anyone alive. At 27 years old, she was the highest-scoring active sniper in the Marine Corps. Her father would have been proud. The thought of her father brought a familiar ache. Thomas Graves had been a Marine too, a grunt in Vietnam who came home with medals and nightmares. He taught Elena to shoot when she was 8 years old on their ranch in Montana. Those had been good days before the PTSD consumed him, before the pills and the liquor, before the morning when 16-year-old Elena found him in the barn with his service pistol. She pushed the memory away. The past was a luxury you couldn't afford in a war zone. "All clear," Wade's voice came through the radio. "Compound secured. Nice work, Ghost." Ghost. That's what the team called her. The Ghost of Kandahar. She liked it. Ghosts were supposed to be invisible, untouchable, already dead. In this place, being dead inside made you better at staying alive. The sun was setting as the team consolidated back at Firebase Gecko, a small outpost perched on a hillside overlooking the valley. It was little more than sandbags, plywood, and concertina wire, but it was home for now. 8 Marines called this place their castle, and Elena was their deadliest defender. That evening, as darkness fell over the mountains, Elena sat cleaning her rifle. The repetitive motion was meditative, almost sacred. Disassemble, clean, oil, reassemble. The rifle was more than a tool. It was a promise. A promise that she would protect her brothers, that she would bring them home. Captain Wade sat down beside her, his lean frame casting a long shadow in the lamplight. At 32, he was the oldest member of their sniper team, with kind eyes that had seen too much death and a crooked smile that had suggested he hadn't forgotten how to live. "Hell of a shot today," he said, not looking at her, but out at the darkness beyond the wire. 1,400 yards in that wind. I don't know how you do it. "Practice," Elena said simply, "and really good math teachers in high school." Wade laughed, then his expression grew serious. "Listen, I need to talk to you about something. Off the record." Elena looked up from her rifle. Wade's tone had shifted, and in this place tone was everything. "The intel we got for today's mission." Wade continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "It was too good, too specific. The exact time the target would be on that roof, the exact location. In 3 years out here, I've never seen intelligence that precise." "Isn't that a good thing?" Elena asked, though her instincts were already telling her otherwise. "It should be," I replied, but here's the thing. That information was highly classified. Only about a dozen people knew we were hitting that compound today, and even fewer knew the exact timing. So how did we get intel that was so perfect down to the minute? Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cooling desert air. "You think someone fed us that information deliberately?" "I think someone wanted us in that specific place at that specific time," Wade said. "And I think that someone might be on our side of the fence. A traitor." The word felt heavy in Elena's mouth. Wade nodded slowly. "I've been going through mission reports from the past 18 months. There's a pattern. Every time we've taken casualties, every time we've walked into unexpected resistance, it's been preceded by intelligence that was just a little too convenient. I think someone's been setting us up, feeding us just enough good intel to keep us moving, and then selling our positions to the Taliban." "Do you have proof?" "Not yet, but I'm working on it. I've reached out to some contacts at Langley, people I trust. If there's a leak, we'll find it." Wade stood up, his hand resting briefly on Elena's shoulder. "Just keep your eyes open, Ghost, and watch your six." He walked away into the darkness, leaving Elena alone with her thoughts and her rifle. She should have insisted he tell her more. She should have made him promise not to investigate alone. But she didn't, and that failure would haunt her for a long time. 3 hours later, the world exploded. Elena was in her bunk, not quite asleep, but not quite awake when the first RPG hit. The explosion lifted her bodily from her cot and slammed her against the plywood wall. Her ears rang with a high-pitched whine that drowned out everything else. Training took over. She grabbed her rifle and her gear, moving on autopilot through smoke and confusion. Outside, the firebase was under attack from 3 sides. Muzzle flashes lit up the darkness like demonic fireflies. Tracer rounds drew red lines through the night. "Defensive positions," someone was screaming. "Return fire." Elena made it to the sandbag wall on the north side, dropped to a firing position, and started engaging targets. Through her scope, she could see at least 20 fighters, maybe more. They were advancing with military precision, using cover and fire discipline that suggested training far beyond what typical Taliban fighters received. This wasn't a random attack. This was a coordinated assault. Another RPG screamed overhead, missing the command post by inches. Elena shifted her aim, found the man with the launcher, squeezed the trigger. He went down. She moved to the next target, then the next. But there were too many of them, and they were too well organized. That's when she saw it. In the chaos and the firelight, she caught a glimpse of movement inside the firebase perimeter. Someone was standing near the communications building, pointing a flashlight out toward the attackers. 3 short flashes. A pause. 3 more flashes. A signal. Elena tried to see who it was, but another explosion rocked the firebase, this one much closer. She turned toward the sound, saw an RPG spiraling directly toward her position, and had just enough time to think that this was how it would end. The world turned white, then red, then black. When consciousness returned, it came in fragments. Pain. Intense, blinding pain in her face. The taste of blood. hands pulling at her voices, shouting words she couldn't understand through the ringing in her ears. She tried to open her eyes. Her left eye obeyed. Her right eye sent a spike of agony through her skull that made her scream. Graves is hit. We need a medevac now. She recognized Wade's voice, felt his hands pressing against her face. She wanted to tell him about the signal, about the person with the flashlight, but her mouth wouldn't form the words. Stay with me, Ghost, Wade was saying, his face swimming in and out of focus above her. You're going to be fine. The bleeding's not that bad. We're getting you out of here. Elena tried to speak again, managed only a whisper. Flashlight. Someone signaled. What? Wade leaned closer. What are you saying? Traitor. Inside the wire. I saw. But then the morphine hit her system and the world faded to merciful black. She woke 3 days later in a hospital bed at Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany. The first thing she noticed was that she could only see out of one eye. The second thing she noticed was that her right eye was covered in bandages that felt thick and wrong. The third thing she noticed was the doctor standing beside her bed, and the expression on his face told her everything she needed to know before he started worrying. Sergeant Graves. The doctor began, his voice professionally gentle, in the way that doctors use when delivering bad news. You're lucky to be alive. The shrapnel from the RPG missed your brain by less than an inch. But I need to be straight with you about your eye. Elena said nothing, just stared at him with her one good eye. The damage to your right eye is extensive, the doctor continued. Multiple fragments penetrated the orbital cavity. We were able to save the eye itself, but the retina has sustained significant trauma. You've lost approximately 40% of your visual acuity in that eye, and what remains is distorted. Your depth perception will be severely compromised. Can it be fixed? Elena's voice sounded strange to her own ears, rough and thick. The doctor's expression answered before his words did. I'm sorry, the damage is permanent. With extensive rehabilitation, you might regain some functionality, but you'll never have full vision in that eye again. Elena felt something cold settle in her chest. My career as a sniper. The doctor shook his head slowly. That's not my call to make, but realistically, precision shooting requires perfect vision and depth perception. I'm sorry, Sergeant. Your service as a sniper is over. The words hung in the air between them like smoke from a gun she couldn't unfire. Over. Finished. Done. Everything she had built. Everything she had become, everything that made her Elena Graves instead of just another broken veteran, gone in an instant of fire and metal. The doctor said more things, words about medical discharge and disability benefits and rehabilitation programs, but Elena didn't hear them. She was thinking about her father, about how he had come home from Vietnam broken and had never figured out how to fix himself. She was thinking about how she had joined the Marines partly to understand him, to walk in his footsteps, to maybe find some way to make peace with his memory. And now she was following in his footsteps in a way she had never intended. Coming home broken, used up, finished. No, she refused to accept that. She couldn't. But refusing to accept reality didn't change it. Over the next 2 weeks, as she was transferred to Walter Reed National Military Medical Center in Washington, Elena was forced to confront the truth of her new limitations. Simple tasks became frustrating exercises in failure. Pouring a glass of water without spilling. Walking downstairs without misjudging the distance. Buttoning her uniform with fingers that suddenly seemed to belong to someone else. And shooting. God, the shooting was the worst. The hospital had a small range where wounded warriors could practice basic marksmanship as part of their rehabilitation. Elena went there every day, desperate to prove that she could still do the one thing that defined her. She failed every time. At 50 yards targets, she could have hit blindfolded before now danced mockingly out of her aim. Her depth perception was gone, destroyed. She couldn't judge distances anymore. When she tried to line up a shot, the sight picture swam and blurred, refusing to resolve into the clear, crisp image she needed. After a week of failure, she stopped going to the range. Captain Wade called her regularly from Afghanistan. They didn't talk about the shooting or the career that was over or the future that suddenly looked like a vast, empty wasteland. They talked about stupid things, the weather, the food, the latest ridiculous directive from command. It was the conversational equivalent of applying a Band-Aid to a severed limb. but Elena appreciated the effort. Then 3 weeks after she arrived at Walter Reed, the calls from Wade stopped. Elena tried calling him back. No answer. She reached out to other members of her unit. They were sympathetic but vague. Wade was fine, they said. Just busy. A lot happening. They'd have him call her back. 2 days later, Major Derek Stone came to visit her. Stone was 35 years old, built like a recruiting poster, with steel gray eyes and the kind of square jaw that suggested he'd been genetically engineered to lead Marines. He had been Elena's commanding officer 2 years ago before she was transferred to Wade's team. He'd also been something more than that briefly, a relationship that had burned bright and fast before collapsing under the weight of Stone's ambition and Elena's dedication to her craft. Seeing him now standing in her hospital room in his dress blues with his officer's bearing and his carefully neutral expression, Elena felt a complex tangle of emotions that she didn't have the energy to sort through. "Elena," Stone said, and his voice was the same as she remembered, deep, confident, with an undertone of command that never quite went away, even in private moments. "I heard what happened. I'm so sorry." "Thanks," Elena replied, keeping her tone flat. "What are you doing here, Derek?" Stone pulled a chair close to her bed and sat down, his movements precise and controlled. "I'm here about Brian Wade." Something in his tone made Elena's stomach clench. "What about him?" "He's dead." "Elena, I'm sorry. There was an accident 4 days ago. A vehicle rollover returning from a patrol. Wade and 2 others were killed." The words hit Elena like physical blows. Dead. Wade was dead. The man who had saved her life, who had been her friend and her mentor, who had been investigating a traitor within their ranks, dead in a convenient accident just days after he'd started asking questions. "Bullshit," Elena said, her voice sharp. "Wade was the best driver in the unit. He wouldn't roll a vehicle." Stone's expression remained carefully neutral. "Accidents happen in war zones, Elena. The roads there are terrible, the vehicles are worn out, and people get tired. Sometimes there's no deeper explanation." "He told me he was investigating intelligence leaks," Elena pressed. "He thought someone on our side was feeding information to the Taliban." "Did he tell you about that?" "He mentioned some concerns," Stone acknowledged. "I told him I'd look into it. And I am. There's a task force forming to investigate possible security breaches. If there's a leak, we'll find it." Elena studied his face, searching for any sign of deception. Stone had always been hard to read, even when they were together. That was part of what had attracted her to him initially, the sense that beneath the military veneer was something deeper and more complex. It was also why the relationship had failed. You couldn't love someone you couldn't trust, and Elena had never been quite sure she could trust Derek Stone with anything more than her life. "I want to help," Elena said. "Let me see Wade's files, his investigation notes. You can focus on your recovery," Stone interrupted gently but firmly. "You've been through trauma, Elena, both physical and now emotional. You need time to heal. What I need is to find out who killed my friend." "If someone killed him," Stone said, "then I will find them. I promise you that. But you need to let me handle this. You're in no condition to—" "To what?" Elena's anger flared hot and sudden. "To be useful, to do anything more than sit here and feel sorry for myself." "Is that what you were going to say?" Stone held up his hands in a placating gesture. "That's not what I meant. I just meant that you've got enough to deal with right now. Let me carry this weight for you." Elena wanted to argue, but what was the point? Stone was right about one thing: she was in no position to investigate anything. She couldn't even shoot straight anymore. What was she going to do, interrogate suspects by squinting at them with her one good eye? The futility of it all crashed over her like a wave. Stone seemed to sense her despair. He reached out and took her hand, his grip firm and warm. "I know this feels like the end," he said quietly, "but it's not. You're stronger than you think, Elena. You'll find a way forward. And when you do, you'll still be the woman I respected more than any Marine I've ever served with." It was a nice speech. Elena even appreciated the sentiment behind it. But words didn't change reality. Words didn't fix broken eyes or broken careers or broken lives. After Stone left, Elena lay in her hospital bed and stared at the ceiling with her one good eye. She thought about her father, about how he had given up. She thought about Wade, dead in the desert investigating a traitor. She thought about the person who had signaled with the flashlight during the attack on the firebase and wondered if she had imagined it in the chaos and confusion. And she thought about giving up. It would be easy. Just let the medical discharge process play out. Take the disability check, go back to Montana, and fade into the comfortable obscurity of being a broken veteran in a country full of them. Stop fighting, stop trying, stop caring. Her father had made that choice. She understood now in a way she never had before why he'd done it. When you lost the one thing that defined you, when you couldn't do the one job you were born to do, what was the point of continuing? But even as she thought it, something stubborn and mulish in Elena's core refused to accept defeat. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was just the simple fact that she was Thomas Graves's daughter, and Graves didn't quit even when quitting was the smart thing to do. 3 days later, Elena went back to the range. She didn't tell anyone. She just went down early in the morning when the facility was mostly empty, checked out a rifle, and set herself up at the 50-yard line. The first 10 shots were awful. She couldn't find her sight picture, couldn't judge the distance, couldn't make her body do what her mind commanded. But on the 11th shot, something clicked. Just for a moment, just for an instant, she felt the old rhythm. The breath, the pause, the squeeze. The target pinged. It wasn't a perfect shot. It wasn't even a particularly good shot. But it was a hit, and that was something. Elena kept shooting. By the time she left the range 2 hours later, she was still hitting more misses than hits, but the ratio was improving. It wasn't much, but it was a start. That afternoon, when Elena returned to her room, there was a package waiting for her. No return address, just her name and room number written in careful block letters. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note. The note said, "If I'm dead, you need to see this. Keep it safe. Trust no one. Find Reeves, BW." Elena's hands shook as she plugged the USB drive into her laptop. The drive contained encrypted files, mission reports, intelligence summaries, communication logs. Wade had compiled everything before he died, creating a record of his investigation. At the center of it all was a pattern: 5 missions over the past 18 months. 5 times when American forces had received unusually precise intelligence, moved on a target, and walked into heavier resistance than expected. 32 Marines killed across those 5 operations. The casualties were spread across different units in different areas of operation, making it hard to see the connection unless you knew to look for it. But Wade had looked, and Wade had found something. There was a code name, Shepherd. That was what Wade called the traitor because, like a shepherd, this person was leading the flock to slaughter. The files included a list of suspects, 5 names of people who had access to all the compromised intelligence. Elena scanned the list, her heart sinking as she recognized familiar names. Fellow officers, people she had served with, people she had trusted. The 5th name on the list made her stop breathing. Major Derek Stone. Elena sat back, her mind racing. Stone had access to everything. He was senior enough to have high-level clearances, connected enough to know about operations across multiple units. And he had been the one to tell her about Wade's death, to reassure her that it was just an accident, to encourage her to let it go and focus on recovery. But that didn't make him guilty. Being on a list of suspects wasn't proof of anything. Half the officers in theater were probably on that list. Still, the timing of Wade's death, coming right after he'd started investigating Shepherd, was deeply suspicious. And Stone's visit, his careful words, his insistence that Elena stay out of the investigation, it all took on a different color now. Trust no one, Wade had written. The note had also said to find Reeves. Elena had no idea who that was, but Wade wouldn't have included the name without reason. She spent the next hour trying to track down any Marine or intelligence officer named Reeves who might have been connected to Wade's investigation. She came up empty. Then, as she was closing her laptop, frustrated and exhausted, there was a knock on her door. Elena tensed, suddenly paranoid. "Come in." The door opened and a man walked in. He was in his early 60s with steel gray hair, cut high and tight in the military fashion. His face was weathered and hard, with deep lines around his eyes and mouth that spoke of decades in the sun and the wind. He wore civilian clothes, jeans, and a button-down shirt, but his bearing was unmistakably military. Most striking were his eyes. They were a pale blue-gray like winter ice, and they studied Elena with an intensity that made her feel as if she were being assessed, measured, and cataloged in the space of a heartbeat. Sergeant Graves, Chewing, the man said, his voice a deep rumble. My name is Colonel James Reeves. I believe you have something that belongs to a mutual friend of ours. Elena's hand moved instinctively toward the USB drive still plugged into her laptop. Who are you? I already told you. I'm James Reeves, retired formerly of Marine Scout Sniper Platoon 1st Battalion, 7th Marines. I served 3 tours in Vietnam and 2 in the First Gulf War. After that, I was an instructor at Quantico until I retired 5 years ago. Reeves stepped fully into the room and closed the door behind him. But what you really want to know is why you should trust me. That would be nice, yes. Reeves reached into his pocket slowly, making sure Elena could see his hands. He pulled out a photograph and handed it to her. The photograph showed 2 young Marines barely out of their teens standing in jungle fatigues with their arms around each other's shoulders. One of them was clearly Reeves, 40 years younger, but still recognizable. The other took Elena a moment to place because she had only ever seen him in old photographs from her mother's albums. It was her father. Thomas Graves saved my life in the Ia Drang Valley in 1967, Reeves said quietly. We were pinned down by NVA regulars and I took a round through my thigh. Your father carried me 2 miles through hostile territory to the extraction point. I would have bled out if not for him. Reeves met Elena's eyes. I owed him a debt I could never repay. When I heard his daughter was in trouble, I decided to come pay what I could on that debt. Elena stared at the photograph, at her father's young face, at the man he had been before the war, ate him from the inside out. How did you know I was in trouble? Brian Wade contacted me 3 weeks ago, Reeves has said. He told me about the intelligence leaks about Shepard and about his investigation. He asked for my help, said he needed someone outside the chain of command who he could trust. I agreed to assist him. Reeves's expression darkened. Then he died in what I'm told was an accident, though I have my doubts. So do I, Elena admitted. She made a decision, one that felt dangerous but necessary. She gestured to the laptop. He left me files, everything he found about Shepard. I don't know what to do with them. Reeves moved to the laptop, his movements economical and precise. He scrolled through the files, his expression growing grimmer with each page. Finally, he sat back. This is good work, he said. Wade was thorough, but he didn't get far enough. He identified Shepard's activities, but not Shepard's identity. That's what got him killed. He was getting close, and Shepard knew it. Can you finish what he started? Maybe, but I'm going to need help, and that's going to be a problem because the one person I trust to help me, Reeves looked at Elena, just got told by the United States Marine Corps that she's no longer fit for duty. I can barely shoot anymore, Elena said bitterly. What help could I possibly be? Reeves stood and walked to the window looking out at the hospital grounds. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but firm. Do you know what happened to me in Mogadishu in 1993? Elena shook her head. I took shrapnel from a grenade, lost 35% of the vision in my left eye. The Corps wanted to medical me out, said I was done as a sniper. Reeves turned back to face her. I refused to accept that. I spent 6 months teaching myself to shoot again, developing new techniques, new ways of calculating range and compensation. It was the hardest thing I ever did, but when I was finished, I was a better sniper than I had been before I was wounded. How is that possible? Because I stopped relying on my eyes and started trusting my training, Reeves said. Perfect vision is a luxury, Sergeant Graves. What makes a sniper great isn't their eyesight. It's their discipline, their patience, their ability to control their body and their mind. Those things don't go away just because you lose some visual acuity. Elena wanted to believe him, but weeks of failure had carved doubt deep into her heart. I've tried. I can't make the shots anymore. That's because you're trying to shoot the way you used to, Reeves countered. You need to learn to shoot a new way, and I can teach you if you're willing to learn. Why would you do that? Reeves looked at the photograph of himself and Elena's father still lying on the bed. Because I owed your father a debt. And because Wade asked me to look after you, and because Shepard is still out there selling American lives to our enemies, and I need the best damn sniper I can find to help me stop him. He met her eyes. Are you that sniper or not? Elena thought about her father, about Wade, about the 32 Marines who had died because someone had betrayed them. She thought about the person who had signaled with the flashlight during the attack on the firebase. And she thought about what her father had always told her when she was learning to shoot on the ranch in Montana. It's not about the target, Elena. It's about who you decide to be when you're looking at it. Elena stood up, ignoring the twinge in her healing wounds. When do we start? Reeves smiled, a small, slight curve of his mouth that suggested approval. Tomorrow morning. There's a range at Quantico where I still have access. It's isolated, private. No one will bother us there. We'll start from the beginning, like you've never held a rifle before, and we'll build you back up into something new. How long will it take? As long as it takes, Reeves said. Could be 3 months, could be 6, but however long it takes, we'll see it through. And when we're done, you're going to help me find Shepard and make sure he can never sell out another Marine. Elena nodded slowly. Then I'll be ready Monday morning. Good. Reeves turned to leave, then paused at the door. One more thing, Sergeant. Your father was one of the bravest men I ever knew, but the war broke him. He couldn't find a way to put himself back together. He looked back at her, his pale eyes intense. You're not him. You're stronger than he was. Don't let this break you. Use it to forge yourself into something harder, something that can't be broken. After Reeves left, Elena sat alone in her room. She pulled out the photograph of her father again, studied his young face, tried to see in it the man he would become, the man who would teach his daughter to shoot, to be strong, to never give up, and then give up himself when the darkness became too heavy to carry. She wouldn't make his mistakes. She couldn't. Too many people were counting on her, and even if they didn't know it yet. Elena went to the mirror and looked at herself, at the bandages covering half her face, at her one visible eye, staring back at her with a mixture of fear and determination. The shot doesn't end when you pull the trigger, she said quietly, repeating something her father had told her long ago. It ends when you decide who you want to become. She made her decision. On Monday morning, Elena signed herself out of Walter Reed against medical advice and drove to Quantico. The shooting range Reeves had mentioned was in a remote corner of the base, hidden behind a stand of pine trees and accessible only by a dirt road that looked like it hadn't been used in years. Reeves was waiting for her. He had set up a shooting bench and placed targets at various distances, 50 yards, 100, 200. On the bench lay a rifle, but not the M40A6 she was familiar with. This was something different, customized with a scope she didn't recognize. We're going to start simple, Reeves said as she approached. Forget everything you think you know about shooting. Today you're going to learn how to see with 1.5 eyes instead of 2. How? Reeves picked up the rifle and handed it to her. The biggest problem you're facing is depth perception. Your brain is used to getting information from both eyes to judge distance. Now it's only getting good information from one eye, and your brain doesn't know how to compensate yet. So we're going to teach it. Over the next 3 hours, Reeves put Elena through a series of exercises that had nothing to do with shooting. He made her catch balls thrown at different speeds. He had her walk through obstacle courses while wearing a patch over her good eye, forcing her damaged eye to work. He taught her to judge distances using reference points and mathematical calculations, instead of relying on natural depth perception. It was frustrating, exhausting work. Elena failed more times than she succeeded. But slowly, incrementally, her brain began to adapt. The world stopped looking quite so flat and distorted. She could catch the ball more often than she dropped it. She could walk through the obstacles without stumbling. Finally, as the afternoon shadows grew long, Reeves let her shoot. Start at 50 yards, he instructed. Don't try to be perfect. Just try to hit the target somewhere, anywhere. Elena settled into position behind the rifle. The scope felt strange against her eye. The magnification was different than what she was used to, and the reticle seemed to swim in her vision. She tried to line up the shot the way she always had, but the sight picture refused to resolve into clarity. Frustration welled up. She was about to pull Weed away from the rifle when Reeves's voice cut through her anger. Stop trying to see it the way you used to. That's gone. Accept it and move on. Use what you have now. Elena took a breath, forced herself to relax. She stopped trying to force her vision to be what it wasn't. Instead, she used the techniques Reeves had taught her: calculation, reference points, muscle memory. She fired. The target pinged. Not a perfect hit, but a hit. Again, Reeves said. Elena fired again. Another hit, closer to center this time. Again. By the time the sun set, Elena had fired 50 rounds. She'd hit the target 43 times, not the 100% accuracy she'd once commanded, but better than she'd managed in weeks of trying on her own. As they packed up the rifles, Reeves put a hand on her shoulder. "You did good today, Graves. Your father would be proud." Elena felt something loosen in her chest, a knot of tension she'd been carrying since the day she woke up in the hospital. "Thank you, sir." "Don't thank me yet," Reeves said with a slight smile. "This was the easy part. Tomorrow we start the real work." Elena drove back to her temporary housing that night feeling something she hadn't felt in weeks: hope. It was fragile and uncertain, but it was there. She didn't know if she could ever be the sniper she had been before. But maybe, just maybe, she could become something new. Something forged from broken pieces into a weapon even sharper than before. And when she was ready, when she had rebuilt herself from the ruins of who she used to be, she would find Shepard. She would finish what Wade had started. She owed him that much. She owed herself that much. The shot didn't end when you pulled the trigger. It ended when you decided who you wanted to become. Elena had made her decision. 3 months. That's how long it took to transform Elena Graves from a broken sniper into something new. 3 months of pain, frustration, failure, and slow, agonizing progress measured in fractions of inches and percentages of accuracy. Reeves drove her mercilessly. Every morning at 0500, Elena would arrive at the isolated range at Quantico to find him already there, coffee in hand, targets set up, a list of impossible tasks waiting for her. 500 yards, he would say. One from the northeast at 18 miles per hour, 20 rounds. I want 15 hits minimum. Or 1,000 yards. You have 30 seconds to range the target, calculate your hold and fire. Miss the time window and we start over. Or worst of all, today you shoot with your weak eye patched. Your damaged eye only. Show me you can still function when everything is working against you. Elena failed constantly in those first weeks. She would spend hours on the range burning through ammunition, her damaged eye aching and her head pounding, and come away with results that would have embarrassed a recruit fresh out of boot camp. But she kept showing up. Every morning at 0500, rain or shine, at exhausted or energized, she was there. Reeves never went easy on her. He never offered sympathy or made excuses. When she failed, he would simply say, "Again." When she succeeded, he might nod slightly before moving on to the next impossible challenge. It should have been demoralizing. Instead, it was exactly what Elena needed. Because Reeves understood something that the doctors and the counselors and even her well-meaning friends didn't understand. Elena didn't need comfort or reassurance. She needed a mission. She needed a purpose. She needed to know that she could still be useful, still be dangerous, still matter in a fight. Slowly, incrementally, she improved. The trick Reeves taught her was to stop fighting her new limitations and start using them. Her damaged eye couldn't see with perfect clarity anymore, but it could still detect movement and contrast. Her depth perception was compromised, but she could compensate with mathematical calculations and reference points. Her target acquisition was slower, but she could make up for it with better planning and positioning. "You're not trying to be the sniper you were," Reeves told her one morning after she'd finally managed to hit 15 out of 20 targets at 700 yards. "You're becoming something different, maybe something better." "How can I be better when I can't see as well?" "Because you're learning to shoot with your brain instead of your eyes," Reeves replied. "Most snipers rely too much on their natural vision. They see the target line up the shot fire. It's instinctive, which makes it fast but also sloppy. You don't have that luxury anymore. You have to think through every shot, calculate every variable, make no assumptions. It makes you slower, but it also makes you more precise." Elena absorbed this, turned it over in her mind. "My father used to say that anyone can learn to shoot. The hard part is learning when to shoot." "Your father was a wise man," Reeves said quietly. "He saved my life in Vietnam. Did I tell you that?" "You mentioned it when we met." "Did I tell you how—" Reeves gazed out across the range, but his eyes were seeing something far away and long ago. "We were on patrol, got ambushed by NVA regulars. I was 22 years old, fresh out of sniper school, thought I was invincible. Took a round through my thigh and went down. The NVA were advancing, going to overrun our position." He paused, lost in the memory. "Your father was a machine gunner. He could have pulled back with the rest of the squad, saved himself. Instead, he set up his M60 right there in the open and held off the entire advancing force while two other guys dragged me to cover. He took 3 rounds, doing it shoulder side and one that creased his skull. Should have killed him, but he kept firing until the medevac came. Elena had never heard this story. Her father had rarely talked about Vietnam, and when he did, it was usually in fragments, disconnected images that made no sense strung together. They wanted to give him a Medal of Honor, Reeves continued. He refused it, said he was just doing his job, said the real heroes were the ones who didn't make it home. That was the kind of man your father was. Brave beyond reason, loyal beyond measure, and too damn humble for his own good. What happened to him, Elena asked quietly, after the war? Did you stay in touch? Reeves's expression darkened. For a while, but Tom changed after Vietnam. Hell, we all did. But he changed in a way that scared me. He got quiet, withdrawn, started drinking. I tried to help, but he pushed everyone away. Eventually, I stopped trying. He looked at Elena. That's one of my great regrets in life. I should have tried harder. I owed him my life, and when he needed help, I wasn't there. It's not your fault, Elena said. He wouldn't let anyone help him. Not even my mother. Not even me. Maybe, but I should have tried anyway. Reeves straightened, shaking off the shadow of the past. That's why I'm here now. I couldn't help your father, but I can help his daughter. Consider it a debt repaid 40 years late. And they stood in companionable silence for a moment, two people bound together by a ghost and a promise. Then Reeves clapped his hands together. Enough philosophy. You've got work to do. 1,000 yards moving target. Let's see what you've learned. The training intensified as Elena improved. Reeves introduced new challenges, shooting from awkward positions, engaging multiple targets in rapid sequence, taking shots at extreme distances, where the bullet drop was measured in feet, and the flight time was long enough to recite a prayer. He also taught her things that had nothing to do with shooting. Meditation techniques to control her heart rate and breathing, yoga exercises to improve her flexibility and core strength, mathematical formulas to calculate wind drift, and Coriolis effect without using a ballistic computer. Technology fails, Reeves explained. Batteries die, electronics break, scopes get damaged. But your brain and your body never stop working as long as you're alive. Learn to trust them more than any piece of equipment. Elena absorbed it all like a sponge, hungry for knowledge that might give her even a fractional edge. But the training wasn't just physical and technical. Reeves also worked on her mental game, pushing her to develop the psychological resilience that separated good snipers from great ones. He would make her shoot after running until she was exhausted, her hands shaking, and her vision blurred from exertion. He would play recordings of explosions and gunfire while she was trying to line up a shot simulating the chaos of combat. He would tell her horrible stories about Marines dying, about missions failing, about everything going wrong, all designed to make her emotional and unstable before forcing her to take a precision shot. The bullet doesn't care how you feel, he would say, as though Elena fought back tears of frustration and anger. The target doesn't care if you're scared or sad or angry. All that matters is the shot. Can you make it or not? Decide. It was brutal, exhausting work, but it was also effective. By the end of the second month, Elena was consistently hitting targets at 800 yards. By the middle of the third month, she was reaching out to 1,000 yards with reasonable accuracy. And occasionally on days when everything came together perfectly, she could touch targets at 1,200 yards distances that even many active duty snipers struggled with. She wasn't as fast as she used to be. Her target acquisition took longer, her shots required more setup time. But what she lost in speed, she gained in precision. When she fired now, she hit. But even as her shooting improved, Elena hadn't forgotten the real reason she was doing this. Late at night in her quarters, she would pore over Wade's files, studying the pattern of Shepard's betrayals, trying to find some clue that would reveal the traitor's identity. The 5 names on Wade's suspect list haunted her. 5 officers, all with the access and opportunity to commit treason. One of them was Shepard, but which one? Major Derek Stone remained at the top of her personal list of suspects. He had all the access, all the opportunity. And his visit to her at the hospital, his careful words encouraging her to let the investigation go, felt more and more suspicious in retrospect. But suspicion wasn't proof. Elena needed evidence, something concrete that would identify Shepard beyond doubt. She shared her frustration with Reeves one morning after a particularly good shooting session. They were cleaning their rifles, a ritual that had become almost meditative for both of them. "I don't know how to narrow down the suspects," Elena admitted. "Wade identified the pattern, but he died before he could figure out who was behind it. And I don't have access to the intelligence or communication logs I'd need to continue his investigation." "But I do," Reeves said quietly. Elena looked up sharply. "What?" "I may be retired, but I still have friends in the intelligence community. People who owe me favors. People I trust." Reeves set down his cleaning rod. "While you've been learning to shoot again, I've been doing my own investigating. Wade's files gave me a starting point, and I've been following the thread. And, and I've found something, a pattern within the pattern." Reeves pulled out a tablet and showed Elena a series of financial records. "Shepard isn't just selling an intelligence. He's also facilitating weapons transfers, helping the Taliban acquire American military hardware. And those transactions leave a financial trail. Money has to move, accounts have to be accessed." Elena studied the records. They were complex layers of shell companies and offshore accounts, but there was indeed a pattern, payments flowing through a network of cutouts and intermediaries, all ultimately traceable back to... "I can't get the final connection," Reeves admitted. "I don't have the security clearance anymore to access the banking records that would show who's ultimately receiving these payments. But I know someone who does." "Who?" "A CIA analyst named Patricia Vance, call sign Falcon. She's been investigating the same weapons pipeline from the other side, trying to figure out how American hardware keeps ending up in Taliban hands. She's gotten close to identifying the source, but she needs ground truth operational details that only someone in the military would know." Elena felt a chill of premonition. Wade mentioned a Falcon in his notes. He said Falcon was close to identifying Shepard. Wade was in contact with Vance, Reeves confirmed. They were coordinating their investigations, sharing information. That's probably what got Wade killed. Shepard realized they were closing in and decided to eliminate the threat. "So why hasn't Shepard gone after this Falcon?" "Because Falcon is in Afghanistan, embedded with a CIA operations team working under deep cover. Even Shepard doesn't know exactly where she is or what identity she's using." Reeves's expression was grim. "But that protection is about to end. Falcon's cover was just blown. Taliban fighters raided a CIA safe house 3 days ago, and Falcon barely escaped. Now she's on the run in one of the most dangerous regions on Earth, and the Taliban are hunting her." Elena felt the pieces clicking together. "And if they catch her, they'll either kill her or torture her for information. Either way, everything she knows about Shepard dies with her." "Exactly. Which is why there's going to be a rescue mission. A Marine Special Operations team is being assembled to extract Falcon before the Taliban find her. The mission launches in 2 weeks." Elena stood up, her heart racing. "I need to be on that team." "I know," Reeves said. "That's why we've been training so hard. But there's a problem. You're currently on medical leave pending discharge. You have no official status, no security clearance, and no authorization to participate in classified operations. So how do I get on the team?" "By proving you're still the best damn sniper the Marines have." Reeves stood as well, his pale eyes intense. "In 1 week, there's going to be a qualification shoot for the rescue team. They need 2 sniper positions filled. There will be a dozen candidates testing for those slots. If you score in the top 2, you're on the team. If not..." "I understand," Elena said. 1 week, I'll be ready." "I hope so," Reeves replied, "because this isn't like our training sessions here. This will be official, observed by a command staff with standards that don't bend. You'll be competing against active duty snipers who have 2 good eyes and full medical clearance. And one of those competitors will probably be Sergeant Kyle Morrison." Elena recognized the name. Morrison was the sniper who had replaced her in her old unit. He was young, talented, and from what Elena had heard, supremely confident in his abilities. "Let him come," Elena said quietly. "I'm not the same person I was 3 months ago. Neither is my shooting." Reeves smiled slightly. "No, you're not. You're something better. Something forged from broken pieces into a weapon that won't ever break the same way again." He picked up his rifle. "But we've still got a week to make sure of it. Let's get back to work." That week was the most intense training Elena had ever experienced. Reeves pushed her to her absolute limits and then pushed her further. 12-hour days on the range shooting until her shoulders ached and her eye throbbed and her fingers were raw from working the bolt. They simulated every possible scenario, shooting from rooftops, shooting from vehicles, shooting after running a mile in full combat gear. Reeves made her take shots while he yelled in her ear, while he shook the shooting platform, while he did everything possible to break her concentration. The mission won't be perfect, he told her. Nothing ever is. You need to be able to shoot when everything is going wrong, when you're exhausted and scared and the whole world is trying to kill you. That's when it matters most. Elena absorbed the punishment and came back for more. With each passing day, she felt herself transforming. The frustration and doubt of the early training was burning away, replaced by a cold, focused determination. She was no longer trying to recapture who she had been before the ambush. She was becoming someone new, someone harder, someone who couldn't be broken because she'd already been broken and rebuilt. The night before the qualification shoot, Elena couldn't sleep. She lay in her bunk, staring at the ceiling, running through calculations in her mind. Wind formulas, bullet drop tables, range estimation techniques. Her phone rang. It was Reeves. "Can't sleep?" he asked without preamble. "No, sir." "Good, that means you care, but don't let the caring become fear. Fear makes you hesitate, and hesitation makes you miss." Reeves paused. "You're ready, Graves. You've put in the work. Tomorrow just trust your training and shoot like I taught you." "What if I fail?" "Then you fail, but you won't fail because you weren't good enough. If you fail, it'll be because you doubted yourself at the critical moment. So don't doubt. Decide that you're going to make every shot and then make it happen." After the call ended, Elena felt some of her tension ease. Reeves was right. She'd done the work. Now she just had to execute. She finally fell asleep around midnight, and when her alarm went off at 0400, she felt surprisingly calm. This was it. Everything she'd worked for, everything she'd sacrificed, all came down to today. The qualification shoot was being held at a different range, a larger facility with multiple firing positions and distances extending out to 1,500 yards. When Elena arrived, she saw a dozen other Marines already there checking their equipment and eyeing each other with competitive wariness. Most of them were men, though there were two other women. All of them were active duty, wearing their uniforms with the quiet confidence of people who belonged. Elena, in her civilian clothes with her medical discharge papers pending, felt like an imposter. Then she spotted Sergeant Kyle Morrison. He was everything Elena had heard young, fit with the kind of movie star good looks that probably made him popular with the recruits. He was laughing with a couple of other snipers, clearly comfortable and confident. When he noticed Elena, his expression shifted to something between curiosity and disdain. He walked over, his movements casual, but his eyes assessing. "You're Graves, right," he said. "I replaced you in sniper platoon." "I heard," Elena replied neutrally. "I also heard you got hurt pretty bad. Shame about that." Morrison's tone suggested he thought it was anything but a shame. "What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be on medical leave or something?" "Trying to get back to work," Elena said evenly. Morrison glanced at the bandages still partially covering her face, at the obvious damage to her eye. "Look, no offense, but this shoot is for real operators. You sure you want to embarrass yourself in front of everyone?" Elena met his eyes calmly. "I guess we'll find out." Morrison shrugged as if her foolishness was her own problem and walked away. A few minutes later, a Marine major called everyone to attention. He explained the scoring system: 5 shooting stations, 4 rounds at each station, distances ranging from 500 to 1,500 yards. Each hit was worth points, with more points awarded for longer distances and more difficult shots. The top 2 scorers would be selected for the mission. "This is not a training exercise," the major emphasized. "The mission you're qualifying for is dangerous. You're with a low probability of success and a high probability of casualties. If you're selected, you will be deploying to a hostile area with minimal support and maximum risk. Are there any questions?" No one spoke. "Good. First shooters, take your positions." Elena was in the third group. She watched the first 2 groups shoot, noting their techniques and results. Most were good, hitting the majority of their targets. Morrison's shooting in the second group was excellent, missing only 2 of his 20 shots. Then it was Elena's turn. She moved to the firing position, settled behind the rifle they provided a standard M40A6, nothing special. She took a moment to familiarize herself with the weapon, worked the bolt, a few times adjusted the scope. The first station was 500 yards, basic but not trivial in the wind that was now blowing across the range. Elena looked downrange at the target. She blocked out everything else, the watching Marines Morrison smirk her own doubts and fears. There was only the target, the rifle, and the space between them. She calculated the wind drift, adjusted her hold, controlled her breathing. Found that perfect pause between heartbeats. Squeezed the trigger. The target pinged. Hit. 3 more shots, 3 more hits. Perfect score at the first station. The second station was at 750 yards. More wind, less margin for error. Elena moved methodically, taking her time, not rushing. 4 shots, 4 hits. The third station, 1,000 yards. This was where most shooters started to struggle, where minor errors in calculation or execution became misses. Elena's damaged eye was throbbing now, stressed by the concentration and the bright sunlight. She ignored it. Pain was just information, and it wasn't useful information right now. She took the first shot. Hit. Second shot. Hit. Third shot. Hit. On the fourth shot, a gust of wind hit just as she was squeezing the trigger. The round went wide by inches. Damn. But 19 out of 20 was still an excellent score. Elena moved to the fourth station, 1,200 yards. At this distance, the bullet took nearly 2 seconds to reach the target. A lot could change in 2 seconds. Elena slowed down even more, taking extra time to read the wind, to feel the rhythm of the air currents. 4 shots, 4 hits. The final station was at 1,500 yards. This was at the edge of the M40A6's effective range, the kind of shot that required perfect conditions and perfect execution. Elena looked downrange. The target seemed impossibly small, a tiny speck in the distance. The wind was gusting unpredictably. The afternoon heat was creating mirage effects that made the target dance and shimmer. This was the moment. This was where she would either prove herself or fail. Elena remembered everything Reeves had taught her. She remembered her father teaching her to shoot on the ranch in Montana. She remembered Wade dying because he'd gotten too close to the truth. And she remembered who she had decided to become, not the sniper she had been, but something new, something forged from broken pieces. She took the first shot. The wind shifted at the last moment, and she knew immediately that she'd missed. She didn't let it shake her. She adjusted, recalculated, fired again. Hit. Third shot. Hit. Fourth and final shot. She took extra time, made sure of everything, squeezed gently. The rifle cracked. The bullet flew down range for what felt like forever. Then ping. Hit. Elena cleared the rifle and stood up. She'd scored 96 out of a possible 100 points, missing only 2 shots across all 5 stations. As she walked back to the waiting area, she caught Morrison's expression. He was no longer smirking. He looked like he'd just watched a ghost pull off impossible shots. The remaining groups shot. Most scored in the 70s or 80s. A few broke into the 90s. Morrison had scored 93. When the final shooter finished, the major tallied the scores and announced the results. The 2 highest scores belonged to Sergeant Morrison with 93 points and Sergeant Graves with 96 points. Congratulations, you're both selected for the mission. There was scattered applause. Morrison looked stunned. Elena felt nothing but cold determination. She'd made it. She was back in the fight. After the announcement, Morrison approached Elena again. His attitude had completely changed from their earlier interaction. That was incredible shooting, he said, and he sounded sincere. Especially that 1,500-yard station. I don't know how you compensated for all those wind changes with one eye. Practice, Elena said simply. I'm sorry about what I said earlier, about you embarrassing yourself. That was out of line. Elena shrugged. You didn't know. Morrison hesitated, then extended his hand. I look forward to working with you on this mission. Elena shook his hand. Likewise. As Morrison walked away, Reeves appeared beside Elena. He'd been watching from the observation area. 96 points, Reeves said quietly. That's the highest score I've seen in 20 years of watching qualification shoots. I missed 2 shots, Elena pointed out. And you made 18, including 3 at 1,500 yards in impossible conditions. Reeves put a hand on her shoulder. You did good, Graves. Your father would be proud. Hell, I'm proud. Elena felt a warm flush of emotion that she quickly suppressed. There would be time for feelings later. Right now, she had a mission to prepare for. What's next? She asked. Next, you get briefed on the mission details. You will meet with the team commander, go over the operational plan, and start mission-specific training. You've got 2 weeks before you deploy. Reeves's expression grew serious. But Elena, you need to know something. The team commander for this mission is Major Derek Stone. Elena felt as if she'd been punched in the stomach. Stone, but he's on Wade's list of suspects, yes, which means this mission could be a trap, just like the ambush that nearly killed you. Shepard knows that Falcon has information that could expose him. He's not going to let her be rescued if he can help it. So you think Stone is going to sabotage the mission? If he's Shepard, then yes, absolutely. He'll set up the team to fail, make sure Falcon is killed before she can talk. Reeves met Elena's eyes, which means you need to be ready for anything. Watch Stone carefully. Trust no one. And if things go sideways, and they will, you do whatever it takes to keep Falcon alive and get your team out. Understood. Elena nodded slowly. Understood. Good. Now go meet your team. And Graves. Reeves smiled slightly. Try not to shoot the commanding officer unless you're absolutely sure he deserves it. Despite the gravity of the situation, Elena almost laughed. I'll do my best, sir. The briefing was held in a secure facility at Quantico. 8 Marines assembled in a windowless conference room, all of them now aware that they were about to undertake one of the most dangerous missions of their careers. Major Derek Stone stood at the front of the room looking every inch the confident combat commander. When his eyes met Elena's, there was a flash of something surprised concern before his expression settled back into professional neutrality. Welcome, Stone began. You've all been selected for this mission because you're the best at what you do. The operation we're about to undertake is classified top secret, and everything you hear in this room stays in this room. He pulled up a satellite image on the screen behind him. 3 days ago, a CIA analyst known by the call sign Falcon barely escaped a Taliban raid on a safe house in eastern Afghanistan. Falcon is now on the run in the tribal areas near the Pakistan border, one of the most hostile environments on Earth. The Taliban are actively searching for her, and if they find her, she will be captured and likely executed. Stone zoomed in on the map. Our mission is to infiltrate this region, locate Falcon, and extract her before the Taliban find her. We will insert via helicopter at a point 15 kilometers from Falcon's last known position. From there, we will move on foot through mountainous terrain to reach the extraction point. Total time on target approximately 6 hours from insertion to extraction. Stone looked around the room. Make no mistake, this mission is extremely high risk. We will be operating in hostile territory with minimal support and no backup. If things go wrong, we're on our own. That's why I need everyone in this room operating at peak performance. He went through the team's assignments. Stone would lead the assault element. Morrison and Elena would provide sniper overwatch from elevated positions. The remaining 5 Marines would handle security communications and medical support. As Stone spoke, Elena studied him carefully, looking for any sign that he was planning betrayal. But his briefing was professional, thorough, and gave no indication that he was anything other than a dedicated officer trying to save an American life. Maybe she was wrong about him. Maybe he wasn't Shepard after all. Or maybe he was just that good at hiding it. After the briefing, Stone asked to speak with Elena privately. They walked to a small office adjacent to the conference room. I have to admit, I was surprised to see you at the qualification shoot, Stone said once they were alone. Last time we talked, you were facing medical discharge. I got better, Elena said neutrally. Apparently. Stone studied her with those steel gray eyes that had once made her heart race. 96 points is exceptional by any standard. With your injuries, it's extraordinary. I had a good teacher. Reeves, it wasn't a question. I heard he'd been working with you. He's legendary in sniper circles, even if he is retired. Elena said nothing, just waited to see where Stone was going with this. Elena, Stone said, his voice softening slightly, I need to know that you're fully committed to this mission, that you're not using it as some kind of personal vendetta hunt related to Wade's death. Wade died investigating a traitor, Elena replied carefully. Whoever Shepard is, he's responsible for the deaths of dozens of Marines. If this mission helps us identify him, then yes, I'm committed to that. But my primary concern is bringing Falcon out alive. She's an American in danger. That's enough. Stone nodded slowly. Fair enough. Just remember, command is in the field. You follow my orders no matter what. If you have concerns about anything, you bring them to me directly, not through back channels. Clear. Crystal clear, sir. Good. Stone moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I'm glad you're on this team. Whatever happened between us in the past, I've always respected you as a Marine. You're one of the best I've ever served with. After he left, Elena sat alone in the office thinking. Stone's words had seemed genuine, his concern authentic. But Reeves's warning echoed in her mind. Trust no one. She pulled out her phone and sent Reeves a text. Mission briefed, Stone acting normal, no red flags yet. The reply came seconds later. Stay alert. Wolves don't show their teeth until they're ready to bite. Over the next 2 weeks, the team trained intensively for the mission. They rehearsed the helicopter insertion, practiced moving through simulated mountainous terrain, ran through extraction procedures. Elena spent hours studying maps of the area, memorizing terrain features, and identifying potential sniper positions. She also watched Stone carefully. Everything he did seemed appropriate, professional, exactly what a good commander should do. If he was planning to betray them, he was hiding it perfectly. The night before they were scheduled to deploy, Elena couldn't sleep. She lay in her bunk thinking about Wade, about her father, about all the Marines who had died because of Shepard's treachery. Tomorrow, one way or another, it would end. Either they would rescue Falcon, and she would help them identify Shepard, or they would walk into a trap, and Elena would have to fight her way out. She thought about calling her mother, saying something just in case she didn't come back. But what would she say? How do you sum up everything in a phone call when you don't know if you'll ever get another chance? In the end, she sent a text. Mom, I'm going on a mission. Can't say where or when I'll be back. I love you. Tell me a story about Dad when I get home. Her mother replied almost immediately. Stay safe, baby. Your father would be so proud of who you've become. Come home to me. Elena closed her eyes, held the phone against her chest, and finally fell into an uneasy sleep. She dreamed of her father, young and strong, in his Marine uniform, teaching her to shoot on the ranch. In the dream, he said something he'd never said in real life. The hardest shot you'll ever take isn't the longest or the most difficult. It's the one where you have to decide who lives and who dies. That's when you find out who you really are. Elena woke before dawn, knowing the dream was a message from some part of her mind that understood what was coming. Today wasn't just about rescuing Falcon. It was about deciding who she would be when the impossible choice came. The shot doesn't end when you pull the trigger. It ends when you decide who you want to become. The helicopter cut through the night sky like a knife through black silk, flying low and fast over the mountains of eastern Afghanistan. Inside the cargo bay, 8 Marines sat in darkness, each lost in their own thoughts as they prepared for what might be the most dangerous 6 hours of their lives. Elena Graves sat near the open door, feeling the cold wind whip past her face, watching the moonlit landscape slide by below. Through her night vision goggles, the world was rendered in shades of green and gray, alien and beautiful and deadly. She'd been in helicopters dozens of times during her tours, but this felt different. This felt final, like a door closing on one life and opening to another. Whatever happened in the next few hours would define her, transform her, make her into something that could never go back to being who she was before. Major Derek Stone sat across from her, checking his rifle for the 10th time. Even through the bulky tactical gear in the shadows, Elena could read the tension in his body. He was wound tight, ready to spring. Beside Elena, Sergeant Kyle Morrison was surprisingly calm. The cocky young sniper who had dismissed her at the qualification shoot had matured considerably over the past 2 weeks of mission training. He'd even sought Elena out a few days ago to ask about her techniques for shooting with compromised vision, genuinely interested in learning from her experience. 5 minutes! The helicopter pilot's voice crackled through their headsets. Stone stood up, gripping the overhead strap for balance. Listen up, he called out over the engine noise. This is a precision operation. We go in quiet, locate Falcon, and extract before the Taliban even know we're there. Stick to your assignments, maintain radio discipline, and remember we're Americans. We don't leave anyone behind. The team responded with nods and determined expressions. Whatever else Stone might be, he knew how to lead Marines. 2 minutes. Elena checked her rifle one more time. She was carrying an M40A6 loaded with match-grade ammunition along with a sidearm and basic combat gear. Morrison had the same loadout. Their job was simple in concept, impossible in execution: provide overwatch for the assault team, eliminate any threats before they became problems. 1 minute, 30 seconds. The helicopter began to descend rapidly, the pilot bringing them in fast to minimize their exposure to any potential ground fire. Elena's stomach lurched with the drop, but her hands remained steady. 10 seconds. The helicopter flared, rotors biting the air, coming to a hover just 3 feet off the ground. Go, go, go! The team poured out of the helicopter in smooth sequence, practiced and efficient. Elena hit the ground running, Morrison right behind her. Within seconds, they were clear of the landing zone, and the helicopter was already climbing back into the darkness, heading to a safe orbit point where it would wait for the extraction call. Silence settled over the mountains like a blanket. The team had landed in a small valley surrounded by rocky ridges, exactly 15 kilometers from Falcon's last known position according to her emergency beacon. Stone gathered the team in a tight perimeter. "Radio check," he whispered. Each Marine confirmed their comm was working. So far, everything was going according to plan. "Morrison, Graves, you have got your positions marked on GPS. Get up high where you can see the approach routes. Everyone else on me, we move in 5. Elena and Morrison split off from the main group, heading upslope toward their respective observation positions. Elena's was a rocky outcropping on the ridge to the north, approximately 1,200 yards from the compound where Falcon was supposedly holed up. Morrison would take the southern position at a similar distance. The climb was brutal. The terrain was loose scree and sharp rocks, treacherous in the darkness, even with night vision. Elena's gear weighed 70 pounds, but she'd trained for this, had run up and down hills at Quantico until her legs burned and her lungs screamed. This was just another hill, just another test. She reached her position 40 minutes after leaving the landing zone, breathing hard but not exhausted. She set up her rifle, established her shooting platform, and scanned the valley below through her scope. "Overwatch north in position," she whispered into her radio. "Overwatch south in position," Morrison confirmed a moment later. "Assault team moving to objective," Stone reported. Through her scope, Elena could see the assault team moving through the darkness below, 6 figures rendered in ghostly green by the night vision. They were good, disciplined, moving with tactical precision through terrain that would have broken a less experienced unit. The compound where Falcon was hiding was a typical Afghan structure. Mud brick walls, flat roof, probably 1 or 2 rooms inside. It sat at the junction of 2 valleys with limited approaches and good sightlines. A smart place to hide if you were on the run, unless it was a trap. Elena pushed the thought away. She couldn't afford paranoia right now. She had a job to do. The assault team reached the compound without incident. Stone positioned his team in a tactical spread around the building, then called out in English, "Falcon, this is Shepherd Rescue. We're United States Marines here to extract you. If you can hear this signal with your flashlight." 2 short flashes. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then from inside the compound, 2 brief flashes of light. "Target confirmed," Stone said. "Breaching in 3, 2, 1. 2 Marines moved to the door with a breaching charge. The explosion was muffled by the thick walls, but Elena still saw the flash. The assault team poured inside. Elena kept her scope trained on the surrounding area, looking for any sign of Taliban forces. The night remained still and silent. Maybe they'd actually pulled this off. Maybe they'd gotten in and out clean. "Falcon secure," Stone's voice came through the radio. "She's ambulatory but injured. Preparing for exfiltration." "Copy that," Elena replied. "No movement observed from Overwatch North." "Negative contacts from Overwatch South," Morrison added. The assault team began moving out of the compound, a smaller figure in civilian clothes supported between 2 Marines. That would be Falcon. They'd actually done it. Retrieved the CIA analyst who could identify Shepherd. They'd gotten maybe 200 yards from the compound when everything went to hell. The first RPG came from the east, streaking out of the darkness like a meteor. It missed the assault team by 10 feet, but exploded close enough to knock 2 Marines off their feet. Then the night erupted with muzzle flashes. Gunfire poured in from 3 sides, carefully coordinated, professionally executed. It was an ambush, a perfect, lethal trap. "Contact east," Stone was shouting. "Contact south, we're surrounded." This was it. This was what Reeves had warned her about. The Taliban had known exactly where the team would be, exactly when they would arrive. Someone had told them. Through her scope, Elena could see the assault team taking cover behind a low wall, pinned down by fire from multiple directions. She counted at least 30 Taliban fighters, maybe more, closing in with military precision. Her mind was racing, calculating angles and distances, trying to find a way to help. But there were too many targets, too much chaos. She could take some of them, but not enough to make a difference. Then Stone's voice cut through the radio chatter, and Elena's blood turned to ice. Stone was speaking Pashto into a second radio that he shouldn't have. Elena couldn't understand most of the words, but she caught enough. No alive, kill Falcon, no prisoners. Morrison had heard it too. Did Stone just, he's Shepherd? Elena said, the pieces finally clicking into place with horrible clarity. He set us up. This whole mission was designed to eliminate Falcon and anyone who might have helped her. Jesus Christ, Morrison breathed. What do we do? Elena made a decision. I'm taking command. Under emergency provision of UCMJ, Article 94, Major Stone is relieved of command for suspected treason. All units, this is Overwatch North. Stone is Shepherd. He's compromised. Do not follow his orders. Acknowledge. For a moment, silence. Then one by one, the Marines on the assault team confirmed they had received the transmission. Stone's voice came through cold and deadly. Graves, you just made the biggest mistake of your life. Taliban fighters, the snipers on the ridgelines, take them out first. Suddenly, Elena's position was taking fire. Rounds cracked past her head, ricocheted off the rocks around her. The Taliban knew exactly where she was because Stone had told them. She rolled away from her position, taking cover behind a larger boulder. Her radio crackled. Morrison was taking fire too. I can't stay here, Morrison called. They're zeroing in on me. Fall back to secondary position, Elena ordered. I'll cover you. She popped up from behind her boulder just long enough to identify 3 Taliban fighters advancing up the slope toward Morrison's position. She fired 3 times, 3 rapid shots. 3 fighters went down. Moving, Morrison called. Elena provided covering fire as Morrison bounded to a new position 50 yards back. But in doing so, she'd revealed herself again. Now even more fire was coming her way, and she had to displace as well. This was turning into a running gunfight in mountainous terrain at night with overwhelming enemy forces and a traitor commanding the American element. The tactical situation was, in technical military terms, completely fucked. Overwatch North to assault team, Elena called. Report status. We're pinned down, one of the Marines, Corporal Jackson, replied. Taking casualties. Stone is trying to reach Falcon. I think he's going to kill her. That couldn't happen. Everything, Wade's death, her injuries, all of it would be meaningless if Falcon died before she could reveal Shepard's identity. Elena made another decision, this one probably insane. Morrison, maintain Overwatch. I'm going down to the assault team. That's crazy, Morrison protested. You'll be exposed the whole way down and you can't shoot and move at the same time without a spotter. Then I guess I won't shoot, Elena replied. Just keep their heads down. She slung her rifle and started down the slope at a dead run, using the darkness in the terrain as cover. Behind her, she could hear Morrison engaging targets, his rifle cracking rhythmically as he tried to suppress the advancing Taliban forces. Bullets zipped past Elena like angry hornets. She zigged and zagged, never presenting a stable target, using every piece of cover the terrain offered. Her damaged eye was throbbing in the darkness, her depth perception playing tricks on her, but she kept moving because stopping meant dying. She'd covered about half the distance when an RPG streaked past her head so close she felt the heat. It impacted on the rocks behind her, the explosion picking her up and throwing her like a rag doll. Elena hit the ground hard, the wind knocked out of her lungs. Her ears were ringing and something warm was running down her face. Blood, probably. She'd been hit by shrapnel again, but she was alive. And as long as she was alive, she could still fight. She pushed herself up, grabbed her rifle, kept moving. The assault team was hunkered behind a low stone wall about 300 yards ahead. Elena could see Stone moving among them, but he wasn't coordinating their defense. He was moving toward Falcon with his sidearm drawn. Stone, Elena shouted. Don't do it! Stone turned toward her voice, and even in the darkness, Elena could see the cold calculation in his eyes. He raised his pistol, pointing it at Falcon's head. Elena was still 200 yards away, moving at a full run, exhausted and bleeding, with only her damaged eyes to aim with. An impossible shot. But impossible was what she'd been training for. She dropped to one knee, brought her rifle up. Found Stone in her scope. He was moving, Falcon was moving, There was gunfire everywhere. The conditions were absolutely awful. Elena blocked it all out. There was only the target, only the shot, only this moment. She breathed out, found that perfect pause between heartbeats, where the world becomes still. She remembered everything Reeves had taught her. Every calculation, every compensation, every technique she'd developed to shoot with her broken vision. And she remembered her father's words from the dream. The hardest shot you'll ever take is the one where you have to decide who lives and who dies. Elena fired. The bullet took Derek Stone in the shoulder, spinning him around and knocking him away from Falcon. His pistol fired wildly, the round going into the dirt. Elena worked the bolt, chambered, another round fired again. This one hit Stone in the chest center mass. He went down and didn't get back up. "Falcon secure," Elena shouted. "Stone is down." She reached the stone wall and threw herself over it, landing beside the assault team. Corporal Jackson was there, bleeding from a leg wound, but still functional. Two other Marines were down, one clearly dead and the other badly wounded. And there was Falcon, a woman in her mid-30s with dark hair and terrified eyes, clutching a laptop case like it contained the secrets of the universe. Which in a way it did. "You need to know," Falcon gasped, her voice raw with fear and exhaustion. "Stone wasn't working alone. There's another." She never finished the sentence. A Taliban fighter had gotten close enough to throw a grenade, and it landed right behind the wall. "Grenade!" someone screamed. Elena grabbed Falcon and rolled, putting her own body between the analyst and the explosion. The blast was deafening, the concussion, like being hit by a truck. Elena felt shrapnel tear into her back and legs, hot metal carving through flesh and fabric. But Falcon was alive, protected by Elena's body. "Get her out of here," Elena ordered Jackson. "Morrison, we need extraction now." "I've already called it in," Morrison replied. "Helicopter is inbound, ETA 6 minutes. 6 minutes might as well have been 6 hours. The Taliban were closing in from all sides now, sensing that their prey was vulnerable. Elena could see at least 20 fighters advancing on their position. She forced herself up, despite the pain, despite the blood running down her legs, despite everything. She got behind the wall and started engaging targets. Through her scope, the world narrowed to simple mathematics. Distance, wind, movement, shoot, work the bolt, acquire next target, shoot again. She fell into a rhythm, her training taking over her body, moving on autopilot while her mind calculated and compensated and killed. One target down, 2, 3, 5, 8. Beside her, Jackson and the other surviving Marines were firing as well, creating a defensive perimeter around Falcon. But there were too many Taliban fighters and too few Marines. They were going to be overrun. "Morrison," Elena called, "I need help." "I see them," Morrison replied, engaging. From his elevated position, Morrison began dropping Taliban fighters with precision. The attack wavered, the enemy fighters taking cover, suddenly realizing they were being hit by coordinated sniper fire from two positions. It bought them time. Precious seconds that might mean the difference between extraction and death. 4 minutes, Morrison called. "Helicopter is 4 minutes out." Elena's ammunition was running low. She'd already burned through most of her combat load. She checked her fallen teammates, found spare magazines, kept shooting. The Taliban regrouped, tried another assault. Elena and Morrison cut them down. Bodies littered the ground in front of the stone wall. This was what war really looked like, Elena thought distantly. Not the clean surgical violence of long-range sniping, but messy, desperate fighting at close range, where you could see the faces of the people you killed. 2 minutes. In the distance, Elena could hear the helicopter coming, rotors beating the air, racing toward them at maximum speed. The Taliban heard it too. They knew their window was closing. They launched everything they had in one final desperate assault. RPGs streaked through the darkness. Gunfire intensified to a deafening roar. Taliban fighters charged the position, sacrificing themselves to get close enough to kill the Americans. Elena shot until her rifle ran dry, then drew her sidearm and kept shooting. Jackson was hit, again went down screaming. Another Marine took a burst of AK fire to the chest and stopped moving. Falcon was curled in a ball behind the wall, still clutching her laptop, whimpering with terror. Elena stood over her, bleeding from multiple wounds, firing her pistol with mechanical precision. A Taliban fighter got within 10 feet before Elena's bullet dropped him. Another made it even closer before Morrison's rifle ended his charge. 30 seconds. The helicopter roared overhead, door gunners opening up with M240 machine guns, raking the Taliban positions with devastating fire. The attack broke the surviving fighters falling back or diving for cover. The helicopter landed 50 feet away, rotors still spinning. "Move, move, move," Elena shouted. The surviving Marines grabbed their wounded and ran for the helicopter. Elena helped Jackson, who couldn't walk on his mangled leg. Falcon ran beside them, still clutching that laptop like it was the only thing in the world that mattered. They were halfway to the helicopter when Elena saw him. One Taliban fighter still in the fight, rising from behind a rock with an RPG launcher on his shoulder. He was aiming at the helicopter. If he fired, if he hit, they were all dead. Elena let go of Jackson, brought her pistol up. The distance was over 50 yards. She had one shot left in her magazine. The fighter was moving, the helicopter rotors were creating wind that would affect the bullet's path, and she was exhausted and wounded and barely standing. Another impossible shot. But Elena Graves specialized in impossible shots. She aimed, compensated, fired. The fighter jerked backward, the RPG launcher falling from his hands. The rocket fired anyway, but it went wide, spiraling off into the darkness, where it exploded harmlessly. Elena's pistol locked back empty. She'd fired her last round. "Get on the helicopter!" Someone was screaming at her. Elena stumbled toward the aircraft, half running, half falling. Hands reached out, pulled her aboard. The helicopter lifted off immediately, climbing hard, turning away from the kill zone. Through the open door, Elena could see the battlefield falling away below. Dead bodies, burning vehicles, the stone wall where they'd made their stand. And somewhere down there, Derek Stone's body, the traitor who had sold out his own men for money and power. Elena collapsed against the helicopter's wall, breathing hard, bleeding from wounds she hadn't even fully inventoried yet. Around her, the surviving Marines were doing the same, exhausted and battered but alive. Falcon was there too, still clutching her laptop. A medic was checking her over, making sure she was okay. Elena caught her eye. "Are you all right?" Falcon nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Because of you. You saved my life." "That was the mission," Elena said simply. "No," Falcon replied. "The mission was to extract me. You went beyond that. You figured out that Stone was Shepard. You killed him. You put yourself between me and a grenade." She wiped at her tears. "I don't know how to thank you." "Tell me what you know," Elena said. "Tell me about Shepard's network. Finish what my friend Wade started." Falcon nodded. "I will. I have everything: financial records, communication logs, names." Stone was Shepard, but he wasn't alone. There were others, a whole network, selling intelligence and weapons. I can identify all of them. "Good," Elena said. "Then Wade didn't die for nothing." She closed her eyes, let the exhaustion wash over her. She'd done it. She'd completed the mission, saved Falcon, killed the traitor. She should feel victorious. Instead, she just felt tired. The helicopter carried them away from the battlefield toward safety, toward home. Elena drifted in and out of consciousness, vaguely aware of medics working in on her wounds, of voices talking over her head. At some point, Morrison slid down beside her. His face was covered in dust and blood that wasn't his own. "That was incredible, shooting back there," he said quietly. "The shot that killed Stone, the one that saved the helicopter. I've never seen anything like it." "Just doing my job," Elena murmured. "No." Morrison shook his head. "That wasn't just a job. That was something else. You're something else." He paused. "They're going to want to give you a medal for this. Probably the Silver Star, maybe higher." Elena thought about that. Medals were nice, but they weren't why she did this. She didn't fight for glory or recognition. She fought because people needed protecting, and she had the skills to protect them. "I just wanted to get everyone home," she said. "You did," Morrison replied. "Because of you, 5 Marines are going home who wouldn't have otherwise. That's what matters." The helicopter touched down at Bagram Airfield 3 hours later. Ambulances were waiting along with a full medical team. Elena was loaded onto a stretcher, carried into the base hospital. As the doctors worked on her wounds, extracting shrapnel, stitching cuts, running scans to check for internal damage, Elena's mind drifted. She thought about Wade, wondered if he was watching from wherever dead Marines went, hoped he knew that his investigation had finally paid off. She thought about her father, about how he'd never found peace after Vietnam, never figured out how to live with what he'd done and seen. She understood him better now. She understood how the weight of death could crush you if you let it. But she also understood something her father never had, that you couldn't carry that weight alone. You needed others to help bear it, to remind you why you fought in the first place. She thought about Reeves, the mentor, who had saved her when she was broken, who had taught her to rebuild herself into something new. And she thought about Morrison and Jackson and all the Marines who had trusted her tonight, who had followed her orders even when it meant defying a superior officer. That trust was sacred. That trust was what made them more than just soldiers. It made them family. 3 weeks later, Elena stood in a ceremony room at Quantico wearing her dress blues with a silver star pinned to her chest. The medal felt heavy, but not as heavy as the memories of that night in the mountains. Falcon, whose real name turned out to be Patricia Vance, had kept her promise. She'd compiled a comprehensive report on Shepard's network, identifying 12 officers and civilian contractors who had been selling intelligence and facilitating weapons transfers. All of them had been arrested. Several were already facing court-martial proceedings. The network was broken. Wade's investigation was complete. After the ceremony, as Elena stood accepting congratulations from various officers, Colonel James Reeves approached her. "Hell of a thing you did out there," he said, his pale eyes warm with approval. "Your father would be proud." "I had a good teacher," Elena replied. "You were a good student." Reeves handed her an envelope. "This came for you." Inside was a letter from the Marine Corps. Elena scanned it quickly, then looked up at Reeves in surprise. "They're offering me a position as a senior sniper instructor at Quantico." "I may have put in a recommendation," Reeves admitted. "The Corps needs people like you, people who understand that being a sniper isn't just about shooting. It's about overcoming obstacles and adapting to circumstances. You've proven you can do both." Elena looked at the letter again, thinking about what it meant. No more deployments, no more combat. Instead, she'd be teaching the next generation, passing on what she'd learned about shooting and survival and refusing to quit, even when everyone said you were finished. It was a good offer, maybe even the perfect offer. "I'll think about it," she said. "Do that," Reeves replied. "But don't think too long. The first class starts in 6 weeks, and I happen to know there's a young Marine who just got wounded in combat who could really use a good instructor." "Who?" Reeves gestured across the room. Elena turned and saw a young woman in a wheelchair, probably no more than 22 years old. Half her face was bandaged, and one of her eyes was clearly damaged. Elena recognized herself in that woman, the fear, the uncertainty, the desperate need to prove that she wasn't finished. "Her name is Private Sarah Chen," Reeves said. "Much rifle shot in her basic training class. Then she took shrapnel in Helmand Province last month. Doctors say she'll never shoot competitively again. She's facing medical discharge. And you think I should teach her? Think I should show her that the doctors are wrong, just like I showed you." Reeves smiled slightly. "What do you say, Graves, ready to pay it forward?" Elena looked at the young Marine across the room, saw the determination mixed with fear in her one good eye, and made her decision. "When do I start?" 6 weeks later, Elena stood on the same isolated range at Quantico where Reeves had rebuilt her. But now she was on the other side of the experience, the teacher instead of the student. Private Sarah Chen stood beside her, holding a rifle with trembling hands, staring at a target 50 yards downrange. "I can't do this," Chen said, her voice tight with frustration. "I can't see clearly enough. I can't judge the distance. It's impossible." "It's not impossible," Elena said calmly. "It's just different. You're trying to shoot the way you used to. That's not going to work anymore. You need to learn a new way." How Elena thought about everything Reeves had taught her, about all the hours of pain and failure that had ultimately led to transformation. "First, stop seeing your injury as a limitation," Elena said. "Start seeing it as an opportunity to become something better than you were. Your old way of shooting is gone. Accept that and move on. Now you get to develop a new way, one that's uniquely yours." Chen looked skeptical, but there was a flicker of hope in her expression. "Second," Elena continued, "understand that being a sniper isn't about having perfect eyes. It's about having perfect discipline. It's about controlling your breathing, your heart rate, your mind. Those things don't change just because your vision did." And third, Elena said, "you decide right now that you're not going to quit. No matter how hard it gets, no matter how many times you fail, you keep showing up. You keep trying. You refuse to let this injury define you. Chen took a deep breath, adjusted her grip on the rifle. Okay, I'm ready to try. Good, Elena said. She gestured toward the target. Take your time. There's no rush. When you're ready, shoot. Chen settled into position behind the rifle. Her movements were awkward, uncertain. She looked through the scope, struggled to find the sight picture. Then slowly some of the tension left her shoulders. Her breathing evened out. Her finger moved to the trigger. She fired. The shot missed by 2 feet. Chen lowered the rifle, looking devastated. I told you I can't do it. You're right, Elena said. You can't do it yet. But yet is the most important word in that sentence. Try again. Chen looked at her, searching for mockery or disappointment. But Elena's expression was calm, patient, encouraging. Again, Chen asked. Again, Elena confirmed. And again after that, and again after that, as many times as it takes until you figure it out. That's what training is, failing until you don't fail anymore. Chen took another breath, raised the rifle, fired again. This shot missed by 1 foot. Progress. Better, Elena said. Again. They worked through the afternoon, Chen shooting and missing, adjusting and trying again. By sunset, she'd managed to hit the target twice out of 20 attempts. It wasn't much, but it was a start. As they packed up the rifles, Chen turned to Elena. Can I ask you something, ma'am? Go ahead. Does it get easier, the shooting, I mean? Does it ever feel normal again? Elena thought about the question, about her own journey from broken to rebuilt. It gets different, she said finally. You adapt. You find new techniques. Eventually, you might even get better than you were before because you have learned things that shooters with perfect vision never have to learn. She paused. But no, it never feels exactly normal again. You always carry the knowledge of what you lost. The trick is learning to carry it without letting it weigh you down. Chen nodded, slowly processing this. Thank you for being honest. That's my job, Elena replied, to be honest about what you're facing and help you face it anyway. As Chen walked away toward her quarters, Reeves appeared beside Elena. He'd been observing from a distance, as he often did. She's got potential, he said. Reminds me of another stubborn Marine I once knew. She'll need more than potential, Elena replied. She'll need determination and discipline and about 1,000 hours on this range. Which you'll provide, Reeves said. It wasn't a question. Which I'll provide, Elena confirmed. They stood together in silence, watching the sun set over the Quantico ranges, the same ranges where Elena had been broken and rebuilt, where she'd learned that the end of one thing could be the beginning of something better. Your father would be proud, Reeves said again, as he had said so many times before. But this time Elena believed it. I think so too, she said quietly. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the ambush that shattered her eye, and her confidence, Wade's death that gave her purpose, Reeves's training that rebuilt her, and the mission that proved she was more than her injuries. And she thought about the future, about all the young Marines like Sarah Chen who would come through her training, who would need someone to show them that broken doesn't mean finished. That's what she would do now. That's who she would be. Not just a sniper, but a teacher. Not just a warrior, but a mentor. Not just someone who survived their own breaking, but someone who helped others survive theirs. The shot doesn't end when you pull the trigger, her father had told her. It ends when you decide who you want to become. Elena had made her decision. She would become the person who stood beside the broken ones and showed them how to rebuild. She would be what Reeves had been for her, a guide through the darkness, a voice that said, again, when everything said quit. And maybe in doing that, she would finally make peace with all the ghosts that haunted her. Her father Wade, the 32 Marines who died because of Shepard's betrayal, and the version of herself that died on that night in Kandahar. A year later, Elena stood on the same range watching her class of 15 students practice their marksmanship. 3 of them had vision problems like hers. 2 had lost fingers in combat. 1 had severe PTSD that made loud noises a constant challenge. All of them had been told their careers as snipers were over. And all of this were proving that assessment wrong. Sarah Chen was one of them, now consistently hitting targets at 800 yards with her damaged eye. She'd developed her own unique technique, different from Elena's, proof that there were multiple paths to the same destination. Morrison had joined Elena as a junior instructor, bringing his technical expertise and tactical experience to complement her focus on adaptive shooting techniques. Together, they were building something new, a training program specifically designed for wounded warriors who refused to quit, who wanted to prove that physical limitations were just challenges to be overcome. The program was gaining attention. Other branches of the military were asking for information. The legend of the ghost of Kandahar, the sniper who lost her vision but came back to take the impossible shot, was spreading through the military community, inspiring wounded service members everywhere. But Elena didn't care about legends or recognition. She cared about the 15 students on her range, each of them fighting their own private war against doubt and pain, and the voices that said they were finished. As the afternoon training session ended, one of the newer students approached Elena. He was a young Army Ranger, barely 25, who'd lost 3 fingers on his shooting hand to an IED. "Ma'am," he said hesitantly, "I wanted to thank you. Before I came here, I was ready to give up. I thought I'd never shoot again. But watching you, learning from you, you've shown me that giving up was the easy choice. The hard choice is to keep fighting." Elena felt a warmth spread through her chest, a sense of purpose that went beyond anything she'd felt during her years as an operational sniper. "You did the work," she told him. "I just showed you what was possible. The strength was already inside you." After he left, Reeves approached, as he often did at the end of training days. "You're doing good work here, Graves," he said. "Better than I did, if I'm being honest. You've got a gift for this." "I had a good teacher," Elena replied, the same words she always used. "Yes, you did," Reeves agreed. "But what you've become, that's all you. I gave you tools. You built something remarkable with them." He handed her an envelope similar to the one he'd given her before. "What's this?" Elena asked. "Official request from Marine Corps Command. They want you to develop a formal curriculum for adaptive sniper training, something that can be implemented Corps-wide. If you accept, you'll be promoted to captain and given command of the entire adaptive marksmanship program." Elena opened the envelope, read the details. It was an opportunity to help even more wounded warriors, to make her training program permanent and accessible to everyone who needed it. "There's no pressure," Reeves added. "You've already done more than anyone could ask. If you want to just keep teaching here at Quantico, no one would blame you." Elena looked out across the range, watched her students packing up their gear, talking and laughing with each other. They were more than just students. They were proof that broken didn't mean finished. They were living refutation of everyone who'd said they couldn't come back. "I'll do it," Elena said, "on one condition." "What's that?" "You help me build it. I need your experience, your wisdom, your credibility. I'm just a sergeant who got lucky and fought her way back. You're a legend. Together we can make this program something that changes the entire military culture around wounded warriors." Reeves smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his weathered face. "It would be my honor," he said. "Your father saved my life once. I helped save his daughter's career. Now we'll save a lot of others together. Seems like a fair trade." They shook hands, sealing the partnership. As Elena drove home that evening, she thought about how far she'd come from that hospital bed at Walter Reed, broken and believing her life was over. She thought about the impossible journey that had brought her here, the pain, the training, the mission that tested every limit she had. She thought about Wade, about her father, about all the people she'd lost along the way. And she thought about all the people she'd helped save Falcon, who'd exposed Shepard's network, Morrison and Jackson and the other Marines from that night mission. And now all her students who were learning that their injuries didn't define them. The shot doesn't end when you pull the trigger. It ends when you decide and continue who you want to become. Elena had pulled many triggers in her career. She'd taken many shots, some of them impossible. But the most important shot she ever took wasn't fired from a rifle. It was the decision to stand up when everyone said she should stay down, to fight back when everyone said she was finished, to become a teacher when she could have stayed a warrior. That was the shot that defined her. That was the shot that mattered. And it was a shot she made every day, every time she helped another wounded warrior find their way back from the darkness. She pulled into her apartment complex, grabbed her gear, headed inside. Tomorrow would bring another early morning, another day of training, another group of students who needed to learn that impossible was just a word. But tonight, for just a moment, Elena Graves allowed herself to feel something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Peace. She'd found her purpose. She'd become who she was meant to be. The ghost of Kandahar had finally come home. Elena Graves became more than a Marine sniper that day in the mountains of Afghanistan. She became a symbol proof that our limitations exist only in our minds, that second chances are earned through blood and sweat, and that true warriors protect the living rather than simply avenge the dead. Today, Captain Elena Graves commands the Marine Corps Adaptive Marksmanship Program at Quantico, training dozens of wounded warriors every year. Among her students are men and women who were told they'd never shoot again, never serve again, never be enough again. And one by one, she shows them they were wrong. Her program has been adopted by all branches of the U.S. military and has become a model for rehabilitation programs worldwide. Hundreds of wounded service members have returned to active duty because of the techniques she developed and the hope she provides. But if you ask Elena about her legacy, she won't talk about medals or programs or the lives she's saved. She'll tell you about her students, about watching them hit that first target after weeks of failure, about seeing the moment when they realize they're not broken, just different. She'll tell you about her father, about Colonel Reeves, about Captain Wade, and all the ghosts that pushed her forward when she wanted to quit. And she'll tell you that the most important shot you'll ever take isn't the longest or the most difficult. It's the one where you decide who you want to become. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Share it with someone who needs to hear that their story isn't over yet. Leave a comment telling us what moment impacted you most. We read every single one. Thank you for spending this time with us. Remember, the shot doesn't end when you pull the trigger. It ends when you decide who you want to become. Until next time, stay strong, stay resilient, and never let anyone tell you what you can't do.